few years ago, I used to work as a cleaner. I would clean houses in suburban areas. I would leave business cards at the local shops and got most of my business this way, and some through referrals and word of mouth. One day, I got a call from an old lady. She asked me to clean her old farmhouse. She made a lot of odd demands. I would usually meet clients before taking on new business. In this case, the lady did not want to meet and said she would leave the keys under the front doormat. I agreed mainly because the lady was offering to pay me substantially more than any other place I cleaned. The week after, I went to the house. I already felt unnerved by the long driveway. The house was practically in the middle of a vast and very empty property. I later found the keys and started cleaning. About an hour into the clean, I heard the back door slowly close. I was told no one would be at the house, so I immediately felt unsafe. I stood frozen in the kitchen for what felt like 3 to 4 minutes. There was no car other than mine in the driveway. I was scared and wanted to leave, but there were 2 bedrooms left to be done. As time passed, I heard nothing else. I thought perhaps it was nothing, or maybe something had fallen and it wasn't the door after all. I was walking in the last bedroom of the day when I noticed there were black and white photos all over the bed. As I got closer, I realized the images were of me. Some were taken at my family home, and many others were taken at other houses I would clean. Some through windows or over fences. That gave me the goosebumps. I quickly looked around and tried to see if I could use anything as a weapon for self-defense. Obviously, someone had been looking after me, and I was quite sure that I was not alone in the house. I saw nothing useful in the bedroom. I held into the broom I had in my hands and could only pray for my safety. I used the house phone to call the police. They told me they were on their way. However, I told the police that I would go ahead and make my escape. I didn't listen to their advice to stay. I immediately went straight outside and drove my car. The old lady ended up being investigated, but she continued to claim that it was a break-in. After some time, the police stopped with their searching. I ended up moving to a new town 4 months later. To this day, I still think that the lady had something to do with it. But why? And for what purpose? Sometimes, I still feel like I'm being watched. I never caught anyone, but I just can't take what happened off my mind. This happened a year and a half ago. I had just moved into my first apartment. It was my first time actually living on my own, and I was excited to do everything I wanted. When I moved into the apartment, I really felt like I was finally doing something for myself. A few weeks after moving in, I went outside to grab the mail while talking on the phone with my boyfriend. The mailbox was all the way on the other side of the apartment complex. It was wintertime and the path hadn't been plowed, so it took a moment for me to get to the mailbox. I returned to my apartment and sat on the bed and continued chatting while opening the mail. I was going through the letters when I dropped my phone on the floor, and it slid under the bed. I lied on the floor and stretched out, and while reaching it, something under the bed caught my eye. Once I realized what I was looking at, I jumped out of my skin. It was a man. My eyes widened, and I choked the urge to scream. My heart was beating terribly fast. I was in complete shock. The person under my bed was lying still with his back towards me with a toque, and I couldn't see his face. He also didn't see me. I tried to be rational while so many thoughts rushed through my head. I picked up the phone and rushed to the bathroom. The bathroom was right by my bed, so I hastily walked in, quietly locked the door, turned the shower on, pretending I was taking it, and tried thinking about what to do. I then heard a thump, and I was scared that the man would come inside. Out of fear, I jumped out of the bathroom window since my apartment was just on the first floor. I instinctively turned off the call with my boyfriend and called 911. They told me to wait nearby and make sure the man didn't see me if ever he'd go outside. I quickly walked across the street and carefully watched my entry door. The cops finally got there. I gave them my keys and they went inside. Only moments later, 2 cops came out holding a thin and tired-looking old man. His eyes looked crazy, but he didn't try to get away. It was only moments later that I realized who the man was. It was one of the homeless men to whom I gave my sandwich and some spare change once in a while in town not too far away. How the heck did he know I lived here? I thought. The man had apparently crept in my entry door while I was getting my mail and hid under the bed. The cops brought him to the hospital where he was transferred to psychiatry. To this day, I still wonder how the man was able to follow me all the way to my apartment. The only logical way I thought would be that he knew exactly what car I had and perhaps my license plate. I do have empathy for the homeless and give as much as possible, but not to the point of having a new roommate. When I was in my final 2 years of high school, I was having trouble in my math class. Tutorial services from a center nearby were posted on my school bulletin board, so I told my mom about it. Eventually, we found someone who was willing to tutor me after classes at a good rate. My tutor's name was Brian. He was at least 65 years old. I would see him 2 afternoons a week for 45 minutes each. He seemed like a very lonely guy, never married, and no kids. I felt a bit sorry for him. I was always really nice to Brian. All was well when I finished high school, and that was that. About a year later, my best friend's younger brother got tutored by Brian. I once visited her and arrived at the same time as Brian. We talked for a bit in the driveway about how things were going before we eventually both went inside. My friend and I were casually talking in the living room when she suddenly tapped me on the shoulder and told me that Brian kept on looking at me. I didn't think it was a big deal, to be honest, and we just went to another room. About a week later, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Brian. He was saying how he had really liked me and that he was happy to see me again after a year. He basically confessed the feelings he had for me, and he even told me he was so glad I felt the same way. He definitely took it the wrong way. I was just being nice and civil to him. He said some very creepy things in the letter about how I looked good in my uniform, and that he always wanted to tell me that. However, he didn't want to get in trouble. I told my parents about the letter and they were horrified when they found out about it. They immediately approached the tutoring center and told the administration about the situation. He ended up getting fired for sending the letter and for using the personal information of the clients. After what happened, I thought everything would be okay. But after a week later, I received flowers at my doorstep. I also received text messages on my phone which said, "Hope you like the flowers," and "Give me a call if you want to get coffee." I had an idea that it may be Brian, but I also thought it could be another guy from school since it was Valentine's Day week. I shrugged it off and didn't think about it that much. One night, later that week, my parents visited my grandfather in the hospital, so I was home alone. While I was in the living room, I suddenly heard knocks on the door. I stood up and opened the door to check out who it was. I was shook. It was Brian. I told him to go home, but he insisted on stepping inside. He even tried to hug me, but I took all my strength to push him away. It's like he knew I was home alone. I kept trying to close the door, but he wasn't letting me. I started screaming and crying at the same time, begging him to stop and go away, trying to close the door, but he kept resisting and tried grabbing me by the arm. He then got a grip of my arm, and I screamed even louder. Thankfully, a man was jogging in the neighborhood and stumbled in the middle of the situation. He came running towards the front door and pulled Brian away. Brian then quickly walked back to his car and drove off. Shaking like a leaf, I thanked the man for his help and I locked all the doors until my parents got back. I told them about what happened and they called the cops. Brian was cautioned and I haven't seen him ever since. I still wonder if he tutored my best friend's brother as an excuse for him to continue stalking me. Do you have a true, personal, scary story to share? Send your 500 to 600 word horror story to goosebumpsterofficial@gmail.com. Please make sure you have well-structured sentences and grammar. Also, let us know how you would like your name to be credited on the video. Terrorize the like button and subscribe to the channel if you dare.
I'll see you soon.